two, 1, 2, 3, 4. Honey, I shrunk. Honey, I shrunk. Honey, I shrunk. Nothing but static. Oh, the 1, 2 doesn't really go with your whoop little record player big stop sound, does it?
No, but that's fine. But that's the first time you've changed the tempo and the key. So I'm now going to have to re-edit the image movement to match your new tempo that you've invented for it.
Oh, is it? Hold on, let me try again then.
No, you don't have to start again. That's fine. It is what it is. Like I said, everyone a snowflake, Chris. Everyone a snowflake. You know,
I love that.
I played it to Nadia the other day because they're edited and the first couple are up now. We're recording this one really close to release. This one actually goes up 24 hours after we record it. So thank you to everyone who's listened and watched and commented so far. So I played it to Nadia in the week when we were, you know, like when I was editing it, and she also really enjoyed it. She's sung it a few times around the house now. She finds it.
That's amazing.
I mean, amazing. I don't know if that is the word, but
yeah, she's appreciating art. What can I, who am I to deny that?
No, I mean, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one thing that struck me when I listened to it back was that you go, "I've got something prepared." At the beginning, and I was like, "Wow, prepared, go for it." And I just thought about that quite a bit as I was editing it, and I kept listening to it, and I just thought, Chris, I think it's very brave I just want to comment on how brave you were to cop to preparing that song.
Well, I did, but I was like, oh, what could a little tune maybe? Honey, I think I was just singing it to myself, like Nadia, singing it to myself, which is nice that, I was doing that before the fans were. The fans of the song. But yeah, it just came to me. Honey, shrunk. I don't want to... I'm not saying this, in scenario as a direct comparison, but J.K. Rowling always says that Harry Potter came to her fully formed on a train. Yeah. And, it just came to me. I was happy with it and let it out into the world. It is nice to recording this after some have gone up though. Dwindling views as far as I can tell so far.
Yeah, so theoretically, but based on the drop off between episode 1, 2, and 3, I think this is going to be listened to by about 40 people, maybe 30. So,
but those 30 are going to have a great time. And this is a very special episode, Dan. Not only is it our last one of the Honey, I Shrunk bomb, hashtag nothing but Static's Home Alone for Christmas 2019.
You're a bad person.
But
someone else has mentioned that both Ghostbusters and Back to the Future have 3 movies, a TV series, and a ride.
That's very true. Yeah. It was Ghostbusters an animated TV series?
Yes, as was Back to the Future.
Oh, Back to the Future would be a very interesting one, because Back to the Future would be quite a sensible one to do because people know those movies, and the problem with this podcast is the caveat of once it goes past Honey, I Shrunk, you kind of have to rewatch it to enjoy it.
Yeah, which no one has done in the comments. Like, everyone's like, I haven't bothered, and it's like, great. I hope we've explained it sufficiently that you're not lost.
But Back to the Future would be a great one, and hashtag, nothing but Static's Home Alone this Christmas. But
the reason the caveat to that was how many people had to request it.
Oh, I can't remember. Wasn't it only like 5 or something?
It was something low.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was low enough to be more than achievable. The reason I'm excited about this week's is because, this finale, in a finale twist, I would say, I kind of feel like we'll have swapped roles because, boy, have you got into Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV series, or basically, listeners, I've watched, I don't know, 15, 20-ish or something. Whereas Daniel Frederick Doolan has been committing himself. He's got thoughts, he's got notes, and you've watched, what, 30, 38 of the 50 or something?
The 66 episodes, I believe I have watched 33, 34 of them.
Which is madness because it's a slog after... Well, in my opinion, there's a very specific episode where it then suddenly becomes a bit of a slog. But Yeah, I'm very impressed, and I tip my hat to you, and I feel like it will be you with all the words this episode, this finale episode.
I can't imagine it will be, but like it's not. I just want to make it clear that is not an indicator that this is some sort of great masterpiece of television. It was a combination of wanting to do right by this podcast, because in for a penny, in for a pound, right? We're here, I've committed, I've already recorded 4 of these fucking things. If we're doing the TV series, I'm doing it right? So I wanted to watch as much of it as possible. And at first, I went from episode 1 through to 9 without a gap. And once I saw 9, I went, we've got I'm not going to make this. I'm not going to have seen any of season 3 at the rate I'm going. Which would have been accurate if I'd have carried on from there. I would have ended somewhere towards the tail end of season 2. So I had to make a decision. So I made a list. Basically, there were three criteria for choosing an episode. 4 really, because I did the first and last episode of every season by default, because I just thought that made sense. For the rest of them, it was the lowest IMDb ratings, the highest IMDb ratings, and then premises that just seemed insane. So I skimmed through the one sentence
that's most
log
of the
lines.
show, but
What was that, Zary?
That's most of the show.
No, but I mean the really insane, like not just Wayne turns his mum into a goat. Like that's sort of like that doesn't, in the context of this show, that doesn't actually sound that mad. But I mean, that's how I sort of selected the episodes that I ended up watching. And I'll pop the list on screen now, I guess. You can have a look at it. You can have a nosy at the ones that I had a look at. And we'll talk about, I think, a fair few of these in this discussion, because there are things that when I was making my notes, there were certain episodes I was like, that really helps prove this point or this point. So I don't have I can't decide if I have a whole lot to say or 3 or 4 things to say backed up with a whole lot of evidence. So we'll soon find out.
Yeah, I was thinking that because like you, it's not as many as you, and I fully tip my hat off to you.
Considering this was your thing, part of me when we started this was like, Chris is gonna watch this all. He's gonna commit. Like,
and you know what? I think I would have. The trouble, part of the problem is it's not very good. Later.
Well, that's the issue. It isn't. It isn't. Like, it depends. It completely depends on the episode. To quote to Game of Thrones, every time a Targaryen's born, God flips a coin. Right. That's the line from Game of Thrones. Every time an episode of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is made, God flips a coin, and you are either going to get something either goofy but entertaining, or heartfelt, or there'll be some quality about it that makes it absolutely worth you sitting down for 40 minutes.
And what I mean more by that, because I do feel guilty that you have watched more, as I said to you numerous times. Part of the problem is being that I walk to work.
Yes, I have watched at least, I would say, of my 30, I think maybe 9 over train journeys
on your commute.
Or bus journeys. Yeah.
And I've been I had at the weekend, I had a 10K which I had to train for, and I can't watch it whilst jogging either.
Yeah. Which congratulations, by the way. I know you weren't looking for but very well done.
No, not at all.
I know. I'm gonna. You would never have done this, so I'll make a thing of this. I'm very impressed, very proud of my boy. 10K.
Thank you very much.
And good times too. You sent me the times; they were good.
I was very pleased with my times. I was surprised by my times.
Where did you? It was like did you do a 7-minute mile in the end? Was that your average or something like that?
Yeah, I don't think that was my average, but it was about, I basically I didn't a very light jog, but I was somewhere between 7 and 8 minutes a K, pretty much the entire time, to the point where there's this woman we kept overtaking each other, because basically she would jog and her pace was faster than mine, but then she would stop and walk a bit, and as she was stopping and walking, I would overtake her, because again, I was just consistently, I didn't stop, I just did my slow but consistent pace.
Every kilometre you did in between 7 and 8 minutes. So you're doing a 7 or 8 minute kilometre, which I don't know what that is in miles. I'll look that up.
I don't know. And on 8K, she overtook me and went, "You must have the most consistent pace out here, and it's really annoying." I was like, "Well, you'll finish after me, don't worry." And she was like, "I doubt that." And then, like, I swear, dude, with like 300 meters to go, she shot past me, and I just laughed. I don't give a shit. Like, I was aiming for an hour and 25 and finished in like an hour 17. I was thrilled, but like, I just laughed, and I think because I was like, I told you, like, you know,
an hour and
but anyway.
16. Just saying.
What? Sorry,
an hour and 16. I think you'll find.
Oh, was that my final time? Oh, sorry, yeah, an hour 16. That's
and 18 whole seconds. No, I'm very, very impressed. So yeah, 10 points.
And so, but going back to Honey, I Shrunk, but I think if it wasn't so choppy and changey, I probably could have convinced Jess for us to watch it with tea and stuff. And we did watch some of it. And to be fair, she never refused and was like, "We're going to watch something else." But it was just, as I think you'll agree, those later episodes, at first, I was powering through them because I was so excited by the madness. But the show is so batshit crazy that eventually the enjoyment of the madness kind of goes a bit. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I've got to talk about that because I don't think it's just that. That is a factor. But I also noticed a trend in their approach to the madness. But you're right. As the show goes on, it does become a madness echo chamber where you become desensitized to the insanity. But they have a different approach to the insanity later on as well, which I think has a real impact on how you enjoy the show. I could make that point now if you want as an overall point. I don't know if we should just go.
Yeah, I mean, are you just predicting? You're going to say that like there's at least some attempt in the early episodes, and I think some acknowledgement that it's nuts. Whereas in later episodes, like there's an episode where he's just like, "Oh, this is a fancy remote," and then suddenly they're sucked into the TV, and all fear and reaction to stuff like that is just gone by the characters, including the kids and Diane.
Yeah,
do you think it's that?
That is part of it, but that is indicative of the bigger issue, which is that the show decides. So there's leaning into the madness, but keeping it sensible or functional in the context of the world. But then there's like leaning into madness without explanation or without cause. So in the earlier episodes, they would spend time justifying the madness before it happened. So they would go to the trouble to explain or set it up. So even though it feels utterly insane, it still feels like it follows a certain amount of logic. I'll give you a good example. There's an early episode that starts with Nick being bullied for being Four Eyes, and the math teacher is an absolute monster. Some of the things he calls him, not math teacher, sorry, the PE teacher calls him like math monkey and a fucking like he absolutely like brutalizes Nick. Like if that teacher was working today, he'd be fired instantly. It's amazing. But anyway, so Nick thinks so Wayne has sensibly the logical progression. Wayne is developing a device that can fix vision at the time. Nick thinks if he uses that, he can't get bullied as much, but it fixes his vision too much, and he can see ghosts. Right. The story, up to that point, tracks, right? Even though Ghosts is an utterly left turn, because I was like, oh, he'll be able to see into people's thoughts or something. Like, it'll be something where he can go to school and it can give him a power over the bullies. You think it's going to be related. This ghost thing sort of is a real side swipe out of nowhere, right? And then it becomes a plot about possession, because the ghost actually goes into Wayne and takes him over. And it's a whole plot about that. But there's an A to B. Yes, it's insane, but the left turn is earned. Whereas there are episodes later on where the left turn happens without earning it, without any setup, without any A to B. It's that thing that they talk about a lot, the South Park writers talk about, where when you're writing your script, you shouldn't be saying "and then." So it shouldn't be this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. It should be therefore, or because.
Yeah.
And they're right. They're absolutely right. And that's the difference between the early episodes and the later episodes, as well as the fact that the characters don't acknowledge the insanity anymore. And they've turned, but that kind of, you can kind of explain that and go, of course they don't. Look how much they've been through. Like, but if you turn it up to 11 and combine that with not earning it, there are some episodes. But I think overall, like, just to give it like a summary to start with, like, I think this is a really fun family sitcom. I think the characters are fun. I think they're well realized. I think, at least at the beginning, the focus is kept pretty well. And like, while the stories are extraordinary and go in directions you would definitely not expect, there's good emotional moments. There's a few, like in the early episodes particularly, that's another thing that slides as it goes on, which I think hampers the quality as it goes on. There's a little issue with some continuity between episodes. For example, in the first episode, the premise is that they've moved recently so they could spend more time with their grandpa, who we never see again. Could they not get the actor? I
don't know. We see the alien again.
Yeah, three times. He comes back 3 times.
Also the continuity of, and this is so the turning point for me, and we need to talk about this episode in a wider whole. Actually, can I just say, no, to follow on from your point, if I'd have watched this show as a kid,
yes,
I'd have absolutely loved it.
And I watched more of it than I thought. I think I saw a good chunk of season 1 and 2 because they were episodes I came across in both those seasons that I distinctly remembered once I started watching them.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So yeah, I think I liked this even more than I thought I had when I was a kid because there were episodes that came up and I was like, oh my god, I totally remember this one. Like there's an episode where his uncle comes back as a ghost and harasses him, called "The Ghostest with the Mostest," and it's not a great episode, but I think he wears like a weird pan lid thing on his head, and I think he's called Uncle Cosmo, and I remembered almost as the episode went on, I kept going, oh, and now this is gonna happen, oh, and now this is where this happens, and I like it all flooded back really quickly and very vividly. I don't think I remembered anything from season 3, so I guess maybe I went through a phase of watching it while it was in reruns, but season 3 hadn't aired yet, and then I never went back to it to catch up on 3.
I also think if I didn't do a television podcast, I'd probably potentially just throw this on occasionally. It's perfectly conceivable that I might work my way through it as well, even now, because there is such enjoyment to be had, especially from those early seasons. I don't know if I would have then jumped off, season 2, season 3, but I definitely would have enjoyed it. So absolutely, if you have access to this show, I do recommend checking out some episodes, especially of season 1.
And the first half of season 1. I mean, honestly, you could watch it from episodes 1 to 9 and get a really good run and it gives you a real insight into the insanity of the show, the heart of the show, some of the show's better comedy, and one of the funner stories, and then also a sort of a more wider continuity thing if you do 1 to 9, and you could pretty much leave it there. I think my viewing order didn't have any gaps. There was never a character that showed up. I was like, "Who are you?" I think I managed to hit all the major stuff so that I didn't feel confused at any point. So if anyone wants to do I guess I've accidentally created a flood order.
Ironic, isn't it?
Ironic. Obviously that was on screen in this video earlier on. So yeah,
check that out. It's and we need to talk, like I say, we need to talk about this episode. But for me, it is episode 9 where I was like, really? There's an element of it we'll come back to, but it's because episode 9 follows immediately after an episode called "Honey, They're After My Lucky Charms."
I think you'll find, Chris, it's "Honey, They're After Me Lucky Charms."
Sorry, "Honey, They're After Me Lucky Charms."
There you go.
Which is about a leprechaun trying to get his gold back from Wayne, and the boss has it. But anyway, there's a plot in the episode that I both liked, but also was bamboozled by.
Yes, I know
where
exactly where you're
Wayne
going.
Doesn't believe in leprechauns and refuses to believe in them. And I'm just sat there like, after all the shit you've seen.
Ghosts. He was possessed by a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, he's travelled back in time, been possessed by a ghost, and I'm like, this is just a story point for this episode. It's not, and they would do that a lot, where characters would have traits relevant to an episode, and then those traits would not be. There would be something to contradict, not necessarily the mythos of the show, because you've got to kind of throw your arms about that, up in the air about that, in the way that anyone that complains about time travel in Doctor Who, you just got to accept that, you know, it's a bit bizarre. But character traits would contradict, and I was like, I liked the use of that plot in the episode, but I was like, really? And then in the very next episode, they time travel to the Wild West and meet an alien, and that doesn't bother him at all. That's completely fine. Starts working with the alien, becomes a friend. And I was just like, what?
Well, most scientists agree there's life out there. Like, most scientists agree, scientifically speaking, aliens exist.
It's the ghost thing, then. It's him not reacting to the ghost is
yeah, the ghost is a better example, because that is genuinely a evidenceless piece of supernatural fiction, the idea of a ghost. Whereas, I mean, aliens in the way we see them, who knows? But life out there, I mean, there are more. What is it? There are more galaxies in ours. There are more galaxies or solar systems in our galaxy than there are grains of sand on the planet. Like, each one of them having their own, their own planetary system. The odds that we're the only life out there is extremely slim. Most scientists agree it would be remarkable for many reasons if we were somehow the only life out there. So aliens weirdly fit more into a science viewpoint than other stuff. But yeah, but that's a whole running theme. So yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So ghosts, no problem. Then that episode with the leprechaun, the plot is Nick believes the leprechaun's real. He believes there's a scientific explanation. And they actually handle it quite well. There's a very clever ending where he goes, yeah, but everything these leprechauns are doing is just science-y. They're just not explaining it. So he makes a wish, because you get a wish with a leprechaun, and he wishes to get the answer to how they teleport. And the book lands, and when he opens it, with the secret inside, it just says, "It's magic, you idiot," which I think is just such a fun way to end that episode. So I had no problem with Me Lucky Charms, because it was a supernatural thing that, like, Wayne, it makes sense to me as a scientist. He would disagree with. He would be skeptical of something that's appears as supernaturally like that. The problem then is, as the show goes on, there are multiple episodes with that sort of thing. There's an episode where they fight witches.
The witches.
Yeah, which again goes back to Wayne being a skeptic.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because then there are ghosts 2 or 3 episodes later. There's a poltergeist. There's an episode called Honey, I'm Spooked, which comes... Actually, more than I thought, actually. Like, almost a season after the witch episode. Oh, no, 14 episodes after the witch episode. Called it's called I'm Spooked, sorry. And it is... The premise is they get a haunted trunk, and it's a poltergeist that's haunting the house. And it takes less than 2 scenes of haunting stuff to be happening for Wayne to run out and call in an expert on the supernatural and the occult to help them. And I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't we do multiple episodes, the witch one and the leprechaun one, that you're a man of science and you're not going to jump to those sort of conclusions? That was the whole point. So yeah, as a criticism, episode to episode, and very much like a show of its time, because this was happening in every show at this time. Characters would just think or believe whatever they wanted that week, or whatever was convenient,
whatever was necessary to the plot.
Yeah. But I agree, I 100% agree with that point. But there's a more contentious element of Space Cowboy, in my opinion, which is the notion that Wayne's inventions are not 100% his own.
Which is the thing I meant when we have to go back to it. So in the beginning of the episode, he's a young man seeing. It's a flashback to him as a young man with this meteor, and then we have the whole adventure. He befriends and helps the alien, and then the alien's like, "I'll repay you one day," and then we go back to it. and he's given him the meteor, which is weird because then they use the "I'll repay you one day" as like the justification for him like coming back again. But anyway,
but to be fair, I mean, you've skipped one very crucial element there, which is that he claims the meteor is exactly how he invented the shrink ray, and right at the beginning of the episode, the episode opens with the flashback, and then it cuts to modern day, and he's invented time travel, and he's explained to them to the family that he's invented time travel and the shrink ray and all these other great inventions, most of them, because he found this chunk of meteor, which is an element you can't get on Earth, years ago. And like that, to me, that changes Wayne's entire backstory, because now he's not this genius inventor that's invented a thing that no one else could have. Whether he got it because an alien, basically gave it to him as a gift or not, that does take something away from his intelligence, that he didn't invent those things on his own.
Well, here's the thing. This is one of the reasons why, for me, I view this TV show as an alternative reality.
Yes.
This is not set in between the first movie and the second movie, because I like the notion that Wayne has invented the shrink ray, and also, though, equally, I do like that idea in the context of the TV show, because it does address how he's able to invent such batshit crazy inventions like it's nobody's business. We don't really see him sat there working shit out much. He's just able to produce this stuff. He produces a home security system like overnight, which is the most sophisticated, so sophisticated that it grows its own intelligence and fights against them. Like... It just with no real, it's like the Flash levels of, I thought of a thing, boom, there it is, it's invented. So in the context of the TV show, I actually like that they gave it an explanation that kind of justifies that a bit. In the context of the movies, it slightly ruins and takes something from the movies.
Yeah,
but equally, the idea of him creating all of this shit in between a movie where he's got the shrink ray and a second film where he's been struggling for years on how to reverse the shrink ray again. The idea that he's had all of this shit in between those two things is madness anyway.
Well, there's a great moment when in this show where
the ants.
Well, no, I'll get to that in a second, but there's a great moment in this show where there's a problem. I think it's a meteor is coming to hit the Earth, and someone says something about enlarging something to stop it. And he says, "Oh no, the shrink ray can't do that." And they go, "Why?" And he says, "Copyright infringement." Because presumably the second movie obviously did that plot of making something larger. But I think someone says, why don't they make you larger and you can just pluck the meteor out of the sky or something like that? And he's like, "Yeah, I can't do that. Right. Copyright infringement." It's such a fun notion. That's awesome. The show does get really meta. Too meta towards the end. There's an episode where someone says to the villain, the villain's just said they need to go to Matheson, which is where they live in this show, and he goes, "When will we arrive?" And his little minion replies, "I think just after the commercial break, sir." And then the commercials happen, which is just insane.
And of course, where the ants are creating his face, and he's like, "Oh, it really looks like me," and the Doors is like, "I don't know, I think it looks like Rick Moranis."
Yeah. It's great. But the show, and then one of the episodes there's a flashback happening, and the camera sort of goes as if it's setting up a flashback, and Wayne goes, "What's this?" No, someone says, "What's happening?" And Wayne replies, "It's either a nuclear war or a flashback." What?
I'll tell you what. There's a lot of jokes just sort of thrown in, and sometimes some really, it's something we talked about in Stephen University actually, that kind of really modern quippy kind of joke, and you get that a lot in this. Some of the writing's pretty sharp, some of the actual jokes are really funny
early on, then it gets a bit worse, Easy with the panini. I did 2 tours in Narn.
I mean, that's a good joke as far as I'm concerned. But...
or the again, there's so many meta ones "Don't reach for your gun. I don't have a gun. This is a family show. Don't talk to the camera then." What?
Yeah, the one where they like going to TV land is just, and they're like standing in like the script room and stuff.
I don't think I saw that one. Which one is that one? What's that called?
I think it's like, honey, we're on the TV.
All right.
It's in series 3.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, and in terms of like the overall quality, look, the show is insane, and you should definitely watch it because, or at least a couple episodes, because it is hard to believe it exists. And every episode that I watched had something that made me go, "What? Like, really?" Like I get, and not always not always like story or character choices. Sometimes production choices or acting choices or like camera work choices. Or like there's an episode where someone bumps into the camera and it's in, like as if it's part of the joke, and I was like, wait, what? And then like okay, I'll give you an example of one that's like the thing that made me go, what, in an episode, although it's not actually intended to be part of the episode because it's not like written into it. There's an episode where Amy has a crush on her teacher.
Yeah, I was going to say, I need to go get some tissue, so I'm stepping away from the mic. But Dan, if you could just talk about Amy and the teacher, that would be swell.
Yeah,
because it's fucking creepy.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So the premise of the episode is that Amy fancies her teacher, right? And he accidentally finds out because she's put like her name, hearts, his name in a book or something. So he has a talk with her, which we did off camera because why would you make the crux of your episode on screen? That's a waste of time. Based on this show's logic. And then she comes home and tells Nick what happened, and she goes, "Oh, it was really embarrassing." And then she said, "Well, he did at least say that if he was 20 years younger, so that's something." I'm like, wait a second, an adult teacher said to you, a teenage girl in high school, that if he was 20 years younger, get an adult, bad touch, go find help immediately. That is bad. So there's that, which is insane. But then here's the really insane choice, right? That episode is the episode Wayne invents the time machine, which hilariously, by the way, the episode just opens up and he's just invented time travel. It's really not at all, earned. He just has invented time travel. But the real thing in that episode that will make you absolutely scratch your head until the day you die was the casting choices. Because they cast an adult man who is 31 at the time as Amy's teacher. Fine, there are many 31-year-old teachers, that is not a problem. And you'd think that when she goes back into the past to meet him, because she uses the time machine for that, because the show has often got a very good sense of combining the family drama with the science fiction. Those are the episodes I think that were the strongest, when they do that. So Amy uses the science fiction mumbo-jumbo to go back and meet him when he was 20 years younger and see if that is true. And she starts to date him. And you're thinking, well, obviously, Dan, they cast a younger man to play the young version of him. I mean, you barely see him as an adult anyway. No one would really have noticed. Same man in different clothes, barely looking different. And the actress who plays Amy at the time was 19. So it's a 19-year-old dating a 31-year-old. She's actually playing a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. She's in high school, right? So she's got to be, 16 at best? 17?
I think so. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Dan, you're overreacting. That's not an issue. It's not like they had them kiss or anything. Oh, no.
Yep.
They do.
And you're also probably thinking, oh, maybe the actor looks young. So on screen, it's not that big a deal. No, looks like a grown man in a high school.
Nope.
It's worse, and I don't say this lightly.
Bad.
It's worse than Tobey Maguire playing a high schooler in the first Spider-Man film.
Oh, he's categorically an old man, and they also, that episode bamboozled me because it does something at the end where there's loads of choices that could have been good. Because I know what you're thinking. Well, okay, maybe when they go back to the future, there's some hint that he remembers it, or maybe you even justify it. You have him say, if I was 20 years younger, because he's looking at this girl going, well, she looks like that girl that I fell in love with and then broke my heart because I never saw her again. Nope, she goes back to the future and we don't see her and adult him, the same him, interact again at all. They also do a plot where they keep interacting with this little boy, and you're kind of like, oh, well, maybe they'll use him in the future. Yeah, he does turn up. They get back, not through his help. He's randomly there. They look at him, and he goes, yeah, I got fat. And it's like, what? Like, it just exists to be a really cruel fat joke. That episode is
But they all laugh. He's
bamboozling.
like, because they're like, oh, and who is this? And he's like, well, that's the kid. And they're like, and he's like, yeah, I got fat. And then everyone just like, and it like almost freeze frames on them laughing at him and the credits roll. Like, it's
like
real bad.
Like a cheesy sitcom finish. It's bizarre. I threw some tissue paper down the loo, by the way, and I flushed it, and I think that was loud. I wasn't peeing, if anyone's thinking I was peeing. I apologise.
I'm sure it's fine.
I just want to make that clear.
Some weird continuity stuff then. I mean, let's talk about the fact that the shrink ray decides I guess the fansplaining way to do it is that he has set this and can set it and unset it. But there are episodes when they get shrunk and there's a time limit and they will resize on their own. But then the episodes that need them to be shrunk and stuck that way conveniently forget that the time limit function exists.
Yeah,
and so in the very, very first episode, they get shrunk and they go inside Grandpa, and the crisis is he drinks them basically or eats them or something. They end up in food, and they're inside him in a car that also doubles as a submarine. Very cool, very inner space. Not a bad concept, totally fine. And the idea is that the shrink ray now has because the way they set it up in the first one is he's built a safety feature into the shrink ray that means that everything resizes after 30, or no, it's not 30 minutes, it's 2 hours. But yeah, it's 2 hours initially, but it's 30 minutes in other episodes. And the idea being that, that way we can't get into a situation where the kids get shrunk again. That seems to be how they set it up. Like as a safety feature. So the problem is, in the first episode, the grandpa drinks or eats them, and they're inside him, and when they resize, Grandpa he'll be coating the inside of his own living room, presumably, because they're in a car, and it's going to resize from inside of him. So the thing is, get out of Grandpa before the time limit. That's fine, and I think it's a really smart idea. Both it makes Wayne seem smart that he's thought of a solution to the previous problem, and it also gives them a nice little bit of tension and adds an extra element to the shrinking. But there are multiple other episodes where the shrink ray has a time element. There are also multiple episodes where they get shrunk and are stuck that way again. And I'm scratching my head as to how and why that is.
Well, because, again, the episode, whatever is best for the episode, will be the script decision that wins out.
Yeah.
What I did like, though, is fair play to them, because it becomes very quickly just a show about an inventor and his family. And it could have been called, Wayne Creates or Wayne Invents. And that would have been fine, but there's
no name recognition,
brand equity in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids name. But it's like they went, you know what? We've called this show Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Every 10 or so episodes, we should probably go back to the shrink ray. And they just randomly, the time machine and the shrink ray are used so consistently.
Yeah.
But some of the shrinking episodes, there's an episode early on where he and his brother get shrunk in a McDonald's, and aside from the obvious product placement, it's one of the best episodes I saw of the show.
Yes,
it's
great.
Really interesting. They do some really good stuff with the relationship between the two of them.
His brother comes back in a later episode, and that one's really good too.
It's really funny. So there's some real gems. But did you find that they just sort of would occasionally return to the shrink ray?
The time machine and the shrink ray between them both come back multiple times.
Yeah.
But the time machine makes more sense to me because whenever it's used for a very specific plot reason. The shrink ray, they have to keep contriving really odd reasons for him to whip that out. So the time machine, it's often used when the circumstances require it. So there's an episode called, let me see if I can find the name. I can't spot it immediately. Honey, Name That Tune. And the premise is, Wayne remembers a song that categorically doesn't seem to exist. He can't find it he's rung record labels, he's rung production houses, he remembers and can hum parts of the song, and it's driven him mad most of his life to the point that all the other family are like, it's the song again, he's talking about the song again. And they announced that they're going to air this short-lived TV show like Top of the Pops. They're going to re-air these old episodes from the 60s. But they only made 13 episodes of it, and he knows for a fact the song he's looking for is in one of those episodes. So he watches this marathon of this music show, but the song for some reason doesn't show up. So in an act of frustration, he goes back in time to try and figure out what happened with this song, right?
Well, what happened, Dan?
Well, okay. Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to spoil too much, but I mean, I don't think it'll surprise you to know it's fucking batshit crazy. But basically, they're a Beatles-esque type band, and they'd come over, but they were actually Russian spies looking to hypnotize the world with Britpop. And Wayne actually stops them, and that's the reason the song then gets sort of like brushed aside and destroyed, and like most people don't end up hearing it.
But the reason he can still remember it.
Precisely. It's like a time
clever
loop.
Plot.
It's a bootstrap.
Awesome. Of course, it's a time loop.
Yeah.
In the 70s episode, time loop isn't really an option. It's just Back to the Future style death. Oh no, that's because they're in the wrong time, isn't it? Yeah.
But again, that's a very logical story to use a time machine. It doesn't feel like they forced it in. And actually, in the episode with his brother, they use it very well there. The premise is the reason Wayne whips out the shrinking ray is because it is obviously one of his greatest inventions, and he's feeling jealous of his brother, who is a television science personality who does like sort of fart noises and stuff. Aims his science show at kids, basically, and kids love him, and he's very famous. And
that's rude.
Rudy Rude, or
it's
something.
Rudy Rude.
Yeah, and you know, his whole show is like that, and like. So Wayne gets the shrink ray out to do, but there's an episode, in fact, the very last episode is called Honey, I Shrink, Therefore I Am. And the reason he's got it out is because he's decided he wants to be rich. And he's going to be an entrepreneur, and he's going to go back to the moving business idea from episode 1.
Amazing. Does that end with him? Because I know, I didn't manage to watch last episode, but I know that it ends with her being pregnant. Is that do they decide to go to Vegas and sell the invention? Do they try and tie it in that much to the
No,
it's
not tied in that much because I think they thought they were getting another season, and I'm wondering if the plan was to do a season with her pregnant or a season with her with a toddler, a young baby Adam, and then because there's plots you can do with that where like how do the Zelensky's manage a baby?
Yeah,
there's plenty of plots you can do with that.
But
like to on that point, can we talk about what's gone wrong with the finale?
Yeah, please.
While we're there, so they got the episodes and they released them in the wrong order. So clearly, I Shrink, Therefore I Am was designed as the series finale. It's a shrinking story. It's on a bigger scale, and it ends with two plots in it happen that are clearly setting up ongoing things that would be dealt with in a potential second season. One being that she's pregnant, and one being that the neighbor, who's a character that's introduced in the first episode of the second season, he's getting married again.
Right.
So he proposes by the end of season 3. So that's fine, but that's actually not the very last episode, because they aired Honey, I Shrink, Therefore I Am, and then they had an episode called Honey, Who Done It? Oh, okay. I've got some things to say about Honey, Who Done It. So Honey, Who Done It is a side episode at best that has no relevance to anything. The premise is incredible though, because it is just how do I explain? Okay, can you bear with me a minute, Chris, while I very quickly explain Who Done It?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
okay.
I'm pumped. I'm so excited.
Right. So the premise
all you're doing is making me. I want to watch that hum tuning spy Britpop episode so badly. So
yeah, that was a fun episode. I mean, it's a lot of silly running around in the '60s sort of. And it's a lot of Wayne. There's a lot of jokes about Wayne acting, going back in time, and he's such a fan of the band and the song, but he's always ends up in the groups of girls screaming after them. So he's like a middle-aged man amongst all these teenage girls screaming for the band. Like, there's a lot of jokes about that. So it's not all great, but I found it relatively enjoyable, personally.
Cool.
But Who Done It? Wayne comes downstairs and the entire family are sat round reading mystery novels. He picks one up, sort of all like, what's this nonsense? What's this tripe you're reading? And he looks through it and he like points out grammatical things, and these aren't very well written. And they're like, well, they're not supposed to be like intellectual. It's entertainment. They're fun. Like they're not. They're good stories. He's like, I could do better than this. And they're like, well, why don't you do that then? So he goes, I think I will. So he goes upstairs and he starts writing his story. And the entire episode is a recast murder mystery PI story that's set in like the 40s. where Wayne is a private investigator. His son plays the villain. His secretary is Amy. And the sort of like the woman in the red dress that comes in with the initial complaint, that's Diane. And like everyone from a lot of the recurring characters from the show appear, but as other characters, right? Mm-hmm. That is the premise. And you've seen a million episodes like this on old TV. They used to do this all the time, right? So the episode plays out with just, well, first of all, the most per minute meta jokes, full stop, that the show has ever done. The commercial break joke, I think, and the gun joke for sure that I mentioned earlier were both from that episode. It is just, and the episode just gets sillier and sillier and sillier. And then, but in terms of what's actually happening in terms of his mystery, so like there's someone with amnesia, and the reason the villain is such a young boy is because he's actually just the young boy of a real mobster, like the son of a mobster, not actually the mobster himself. And like there's a giant gorilla that beats someone up, and like it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder, but like not anything too crazy. And then suddenly at the end, the character that Nick plays turns around and goes, "Dad, you're not a PI, you're a scientist." He goes, "What are you talking about? It's the 40s and I'm a PI." And then Diane turns around and goes, "Wayne, you studied for years to be a scientist. Like you can't just hop into another thing. You've not honed this craft or something in that to that. You've not developed these skills." And he goes, "You're right. I'm bad at this. I should respect the people who have worked so hard to do these things. This is bad. This is objectively bad." And then it pulls out, and he's at his computer typing it. He deletes the story, then goes downstairs, and they go, "Finish your invention, finish your novel." And he goes, "Oh, I got distracted doing an invention. I didn't, that was a silly idea. Maybe I should give one of these novels a try." And he picks one up and he sits down and he reads with his family. That in itself is lovely. But the premise of the story was that the story we were being told was bad. How is that acceptable? How stupid do I feel for committing 42 minutes to a piece of television at which 40 minutes of it is this story, to be then told the point was that it was a bad story?
Ugh.
And it's in no way relevant to anything else. So it absolutely was not intended to be the last episode of the season. By any way. Complete
No, well,
accident.
doesn't Wikipedia and Amazon reorder it so that I Shrink, Therefore I Am is the last one?
They might. I got it in broadcast order, so
right.
I actually swapped them round, though, myself, before I watched them, because I knew. I read the descriptions and knew. And in fact, some websites get a bit confused, and they put the description for Honey, I Shrunk, Therefore I Am under both, which is why at one point on this podcast, I said there might be a 2-part finale related to shrinking. There isn't a 2-part finale related to shrinking.
Right, okay.
There's some confusion regarding who done it, so it gets lumped in. But who done it's a completely different story. But what a weird episode.
That's a fucking weird episode. I mean, it's weird because that's kind of my complaint with dream fantasy episodes in general anyway. Mm-hmm. But that is particularly egregious, especially when like it doesn't serve any character stuff. It's just, the point is that it's a waste of time, but the show has therefore wasted your time. Let's talk about.
And that's in evidence in the inconsistencies. Like in the Leprechaun episode, Nick is all about magic, right? But there's an episode where Amy's having trouble with her dreams. They piss off Morpheus, the king of dreams, or whatever.
Wait, does that say what is the one where Nick's having trouble about dreaming? So he goes in and kills a frog in his dream.
Yes, it's called Honey, I'm Dreaming, But Am I? And but in that episode, the premise is that Nick is being haunted in his nightmares because of he's got to dissect a frog and he's scared about doing it.
Dissect a frog for science class.
Wayne invents a device so he can go into the dreams, but he ends up pissing off the god of the dream realm, a creature called Morpheus. But it ending up in a battle with Amy specifically because she manages to really, she breaks the treaty that Wayne makes with Morpheus early on. So it becomes Amy versus Morpheus, this god of dreams. But that whole episode...
Basically, Amy doesn't go back into Nick's... Wayne promises he's not going to go back into the dream world again. But Amy then goes back into the dream world just to piss off Nick.
Correct. But in the dreaming episode, Nick spends most of it looking for the scientific explanation. saying there's a scientific explanation, but I'm like, Nick, 4 episodes earlier you were convincing everyone that leprechauns were real.
Yeah.
That and so what you were just saying, that's all indicative of like there's a certain like the show doesn't give a shit basically. It just does whatever it wants to do week to week. And I think for a light family sitcom type premise, it's kind of fine, but it does when you watch it in the way we watched it.
Doing that.
Yeah, it does affect the quality there because you just like there's no consistency. You feel like they could have really taken advantage of of a more consistent through line and created some sort of built the characters over multiple episodes, and it would have led to overall stronger episodes. You feel anyway. So you were saying let's talk about, and I sort of derailed us again.
No, it's fine. Let's talk about the characters
Yes.
and whether the actors do a good job, because obviously these are characters that already exist. So I actually think they all do a fantastic job. Again, they don't. It goes back to my this is an alternative reality Selinsky family. They don't, they're not trying to copy the actors from the films and their performances.
No.
But it's still, Wayne and Nick especially, still very much feel like those characters. I don't know that anyone would look at this and go, "Who's not Rick Moranis, so it's not enjoyable." It's just a different type of character, but it's written a different way.
Yeah.
Amy feels like the one that I feel like sometimes they didn't know what to do with Amy. Like a lot of her thing, like that example just then, she's trying to annoy her younger brother, and there's other episodes where it's about finding the hot guy and stuff like that, and it just feels a bit stereotypical. And also they do that, especially early on. I don't know, I didn't watch as many of the later episodes as you. But if they can get Diane in a low-cut dress and something with a bit of cleavage, or in one episode she's making Wayne dinner in a nightdress for no real reason, and they even have like these really sexual jokes. Like at one point, Wayne gets in the episode where he gets taken over by a ghost. He's like, "Come here and give me those gams" or something, and her boobs are referred to as gams again in another episode, and it's
Aren't
what?
Gams legs?
Oh, are they? Okay, I don't know, but it's still either way. Like,
well,
it's
basically, I was gonna. This was gonna be a point for later in the discussion, but one of the writers blatantly had the hots for the actress. I mean, look, I get it. She's a very attractive lady, but
she's beautiful. Yeah,
but it's on the verge of creepy.
It's so weird.
And any excuse to get her in a skimpy outfit in the show, and they do it. And my favorite example of it, because they then make a really weird joke about it, was there's a Halloween episode called Let's Trick or Treat, Honey, Let's Trick or Treat. And in it, she comes in like a Xena warrior princess outfit. And she goes, "Honey, I've been thinking," to Wayne, where he then drags her onto the bed and goes, "Not in that outfit, just go with your instincts." So she says, "Honey, I've been thinking," and he replies, "Not in that outfit, just go with your instincts." That's insane.
Wow. It's nuts, man. Like, and they really, like you say, one of the writers had the hots for her is probably the best description of just how weird it is, and just like I say, just really overt. And there's another episode, but because they kind of on some occasions do it with Amy as well. It's one of the times that the alien comes back. The alien goes to the school to look for Amy.
Yes.
And for no reason at all, he's looking, no plot reason, no episode reason, he's looking for her in the girls' locker room where most of the girls, including her, are showering. What? There's no joke from it. It's not entertaining. It's just creepy and weird. Yeah. What? Could she not be in the classroom?
I mean, I think
anywhere else?
I think the intended joke is he doesn't understand that humans cover up or something, so it's like he just doesn't understand schools or whatever, like, or he doesn't understand that that's inappropriate, like, that's. But that episode has some weird jokes in it, like the fact he eats through his butt is a recurring joke in that episode.
Yeah, weird, man. Especially so. I feel like they handle, for those reasons, they handle Wayne and Nick better. But all the cast have some great stuff to do and some great moments. But I just found like the treatment of Diane sometimes to be a bit creepy.
Yeah, I mean, problematic is how I would describe it. I think it's. Yeah. I mean, it's something that's going away now, But dear Lord, I mean, it's not like, oh, it's the 90s. This sort of thing stopped 3-4 years later. I mean, you look at a show like Chuck that happened in like the mid to late 2000s.
Yeah, that's true.
And the amount of excuses they found to get Sarah's character in a skimpy outfit, you know.
Very true.
And like they, you know, even in the recent the Lethal Weapon series, they did a trailer where Jessica Alba's character was in her underwear and they were having a pillow fight, and they're like, wait, this isn't our show. And then it cuts to them shooting guns and stuff, and it's like, okay, you're saying our show subverts the expectations, but it didn't stop you putting Jessica Alba in her underwear and filming it, though, did it?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean that's not gone anywhere, sadly. But like in this show, but because it's a family show on the Disney Channel.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It is more egregious because children are watching this. So to say, like, you know, oh, don't think of that outfit, honey. Go with your instincts and pulls her to the bed. Like, that's no, come on, that's no. That's a step too far, you know. And you, like I said, it's. I can see how it's happened because I guess ratings matter. In that day and age, and I guess. It's that old Doctor Who logic of, you know, something for the dads. You know, they used to say that whenever they hired like an attractive companion for the Doctor, it was so that the family could watch it and there was something for the dads, like, which is a horrendous thing to think and say. Jeez. But that is what people used to say about Doctor Who, and I guess maybe that was some of the writers thinking here. Like, you know, I don't know. But you're right, and you're right about Amy as well. By the time we got to the third season, like, for example, in Honey Who Done It, she's his secretary, but she's wearing like a fairly like sort of revealing dress in that episode that I was just like, oh, that's the young one. No, that's the child. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Even though at that point, the actress is like 22, it doesn't matter. Like
but it's also the dad writing the story. Like,
oh yeah, that didn't even occur to me. Yeah. It's that's so yeah. But you were making a large point about the characters and how they handled them before we got sidetracked by that.
Yeah. No, well, that's my point. I think actually the actors and as inconsistent as the writing is, whilst the actors are not copying the film, the essence is very much there, and it feels like a good interpretation of alternative reality Selinsky family. I don't think, and also they make a really good ensemble as well. Like in some of the Honey I Shrunk films, you're like, well, Rick Moranis is the standout and is like head and shoulders above everyone else, whereas all four of them are really good, and a lot of the supporting characters are strong as well. The guy who plays his boss, the brother who we've already mentioned, you know, there's some good stuff there.
And Jake McKenna, the police chief that comes into it from season 2 onwards, like. Really cool, like really good acting, like really like a really lovable character.
I did like the subtle police plot in season 1 where every time the police were called, Diane would give them pie. And they'd just be there eating pie.
Yeah, that's a good running joke. But obviously then they move. Then the police chief moves next door, and it's like, well, now that's their excuse for, you know, not getting into loads of trouble for all their antics.
But what I liked, and again, it's an example of like really subtle humour. What I liked about the pie eating thing is it got to the point where it wasn't referenced. They didn't say anything about the pie, but in every scene that the police were in season 1, they're usually eating pie.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with everything you just said. I don't want to echo. Yeah, I think the cast, particularly, I do think Peter Scolari, who had the toughest job. You know, to follow in the footsteps of a great, really. Let's no bones about it. Rick Moranis is a big part of what works
comedy
about.
Genius.
Yeah, and he's a huge part of what makes Honey I Shrunk the Kids the movie work. You know, he's a very lovable character and an unusual interpretation of a scientist. I think that character, and I think the reason Wayne Selinsky as a character is held up and holds up well even today. Is because he doesn't he doesn't quite fit into any stereotype of a scientist. He's got elements of different scientist stereotypes, but he's a bit more complex than that, and he's a bit more well-rounded. And I think would have been a really hard job for Peter Scolari to step into his shoes. But I tell you what, boy, did he do a good job! Like he is absolutely incredible. Every episode, inside and out. And I think the same is true of the rest of the cast. I think Barbara Allen Woods, I think her name is, who plays Diane, just stunning. Hilary Tuck, who I actually know primarily from Hang Time. She was in like the second or third season of Hang Time onwards. For anyone who remembers that show. Whoop whoop. I doubt anyone does, because most of the people listening to this podcast are much younger than we are. So she's incredible. And then obviously Thomas Dekker, teen heartthrob Thomas Dekker, like, what? Playing Nick. Like, that blew my mind when I realised that's who was playing Nick. Like, John Connor himself. Like, the kid, the kid from Kaboom. Like, what? Like, he was in Backstrom. Like, sorry, to clarify, John Connor from the Sarah Connor Chronicles, the TV show.
Yeah.
And from Heroes, he was in season 2 of Heroes. He did, like when you see a picture of what he looks like now, you'd be like, oh, that kid. But I mean, he looks so different in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as Nick, and obviously very nerdy, despite ultimately becoming a bloody teen heartthrob, which is just hilarious. And he's great as Nick. He really commits to the role and to the ideas. And I want to give to the side actors, to the sort of the actors that recur but don't recur too much. First of all, we got, I mean, the most notable being Mr. Jennings. But Mr. Jennings is
Mr. Jennings was really good.
His name's Bruce Jarchow? Something Jarchow? I'm not sure. He's great. Yeah, but after brilliant. A certain point, he stops showing up in the show. And there's a different Mr. Jennings.
Well, he even gets in an episode, doesn't he even get a new boss? Serves.
Who is that character's brother. So he's also Mr. Jennings.
Oh, yeah.
So they literally replaced Mr. Jennings with a different Mr. Jennings. So I guess the actor left, and they still had episodes, because then that new boss recurs in a couple of episodes, but is just referred to as Mr. Jennings, and acts a little bit like the original character. So there's a part of me that wonders if the actor left, but they still had scripts with him, so they were just like, right, the boss has left the company, and his brother's taken over, so it's still Mr. Jennings. We don't even need to do a find replace on these scripts.
Madness. The alien and the brother are both good. They come back a few times.
Yeah, the alien comes back, I think, 3 times. Tiara is a recurring villain in the first season. I think she appears in like 5 or 6 episodes. Tiara Van Horn. She is played by Jules State, who we all will obviously know as Kaylee from Firefly. That surprised me when she showed up as a child, and I was like, oh my god, this is the thing she did before Firefly, I guess.
Oh, is that who the child is?
Yeah, that's who Tiara is.
I never put that together.
Yeah, like, that blew my mind. She's
oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's nice.
I was quite surprised. So I think the cast on the whole are all incredible. But in terms of the characterization, I think they've also done a really good job not committing to the exact mannerisms, speech patterns of the characters from the movies, but committing to the spirit of the characters from the movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's important as a distinction, because I think it allows them to just be their own thing. And I actually agree with your assessment, Chris. I think the idea, the way I see this, is not that it is within canon of the films. It is an alternate reality where Wayne finds Zelensky, as he calls it, thing that makes all of his inventions possible.
Does that keep coming back then? Like, it's
no, never mentioned again
in any episode I've seen. No, right. Obviously, speaking of the essence of the movies, obviously season 2 and 3 does something completely egregious, Dan, in line with what the third movie did. Yeah, I take it you were as distraught as me.
Yep. Well, even more distraught in the third season when they got even lazier and just used the second season's one again. At least they changed it.
I know, what was that about? It's just a complete. It's got so basically there's an animated intro which is quite good and really does actually set up a show about a family where anything can happen quite well.
Yes,
and then it's replaced by this typical montage opening of season 1 moments. Mm-hmm. So then I'm watching an episode from season 3. Like, well, at least maybe they'll update it. Nope. It's Still clips from season 1.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, they literally use this. Like, they get really lazy. I'm like, go back to the animated one then. That was better. Like,
Yeah,
like what
absolutely. I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would get rid of the animated one. It was so much better.
Yeah, that was a bit egregious. I've just seen a note that I wrote talking about the writing staff feeling very strongly about Mrs. Zelinsky. There's an episode where she has to seduce someone, and she goes, "I'll get the red dress," and then she shows up in the red dress singing "Hey Big Spender."
Wow.
I made a note of that one because it's bad.
Which episode again?
I genuinely don't remember, but I can try and look if you want to know.
No, don't be silly. I'm not one of the writers of the show. Again, it was like I said, because I remember watching Honey, I'm Haunted. I think it was the house one, and I remember messaging you like,
yes,
they're really like sexualizing Diane, and you were like, wait till the next episode, dude. And then in the next episode, she's literally lusted over by a ghost.
Yeah. Like, it's mad. And speaking of actually as well, by the way, I'll just say another note. While we're on the topic of replacing characters, I mean, I don't know why they went to this trouble. Oh, I do and I don't. Like, considering some of the things they just accept you'll not notice in terms of continuity, they go to a lot of trouble to explain why the dog looks different in season 2. Season 3. Season 3. Season 3 opens with an episode called Honey, It's Quarkzilla. And they end up... No, it's season 2. It's the start of season 2.
I was going to say, it's the first episode of season 2, isn't it?
It is, you're right, absolutely it is. And they make Quark really big, and then when they shrink him down again, he's a different breed and style of dog, and they just go with it. And that's the in-story explanation for why they've hired a different dog. 2 questions. First of all, why did they need to replace the dog? Did the other one demand too much money? I don't understand why you couldn't do that. 2, why couldn't you just hire a similar-looking dog rather than spending millions on a whole episode to explain why the dog now looks different?
I don't think millions were spent on those special effects, dude.
Yeah, or even 3. Don't explain it.
Yeah, just have a different dog.
It's fine. He barely shows up again after that anyway. Even though that whole episode has a plot about how, no, he's part of the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's not really in it much beyond that, is he?
No, but I will say, actually, one thing I will say that I love about this show is that Team Zelinsky, as they start referring to themselves, a bit like how in Buffy, eventually the gang called themselves the Scoobies, the Scooby Gang. The Team Zelinsky thing, Team Zelinsky unite, or like, come on, Team Zelinsky, like they would gather like as Team Zelinsky. The show really gave me more of a sense of them as a family unit that were looking out for each other than the movies ever did.
Yeah, and that's one thing it did as a family show really well. You really felt this was a family working together, and that's awesome. Like that's a nice message for people. I honestly would recommend people watch this show. It's just you've got to roll with the batshit craziness of it. Yeah,
like throwing pasta and tofu at ninjas to defeat them, and them complaining because they don't like tofu.
It's just, there's so many, mate. There's an episode where Diane and a cat swap their brains. Although there's a nice moment at the end of that episode where you know where it's going, but when it happens, it's really satisfying. I won't spoil it in case people watch
it's good,
it.
Though.
But,
no, it's great. Yeah, the mean boss switch for the cat episode is weird. Something weirder about that though is that boss lady shows up again in the next episode, and based on the end of the one before it, she shouldn't.
No, not at all.
So, and then there's a weird run of like 3 or 4 episodes where they have a talking digital butler built into the house, and then he vanishes forever. There's a 3 or 4 episode run where like they're talking to a screen in the house with a butler, like a digitized butler, and then you literally never see him again after a certain point. He just vanishes.
Will you watch the missing episodes that you haven't seen?
Certainly no time soon, if ever. I think. Here's the thing.
It will be nice too, because if Jess and I have watched something else with a meal, I felt so guilty. It will be nice not to have that hanging over us.
Well, it's not so much that for me, because every opportunity I've had, I have shoved this on like a fucking glutton for punishment, like an idiot. Going for a cycle, I guess I'm putting on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It'd be sure nice to watch that new episode of The Twilight Zone that I know aired yesterday. I guess I'm watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Sure would be nice to watch that new movie I've just gotten on my computer. I could put it on right now. I really wanted to see that when it came out, but I missed it because I was busy, and now it's a home video, and I guess I'll watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
What's
Like,
your,
there was
what's
a
your
lot of
immediate
that.
go-to? What are you going to watch? Mine's the Hatton Garden drama that was on recently. I really want to watch that. What's the thing you're going to be reaching for tonight?
Well, tonight it's time with Nadia, which I didn't lose out on because I didn't force Nadia to watch this. So that won't change what we're watching tonight. But I think maybe Doom Patrol. I was really enjoying that, and then I had to stop watching that. And Twilight Zone probably actually. I've got a couple episodes that have built up of that while we've been watching this that I'd like to see. Oh, and iZombie.
Cool.
I got behind. I'm 2 episodes behind on iZombie too. So those are the next couple of things I'm probably gonna sit down to watch.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I think the family dynamic of this, you really get the spirit of their team as a team. They work together often.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a really great moment in one of the episodes where Nick and Amy are at each other's throats all episode, but then one of them is actually in trouble, and they're like, "You came to help me." It's like, "Of course." Like, when you're actually in trouble, I'm gonna be there. Like, and it was just a really great moment, and you do feel like the family look after each other. And the first episode that really covers that is the first Rudy episode. You know, what is that episode called again?
Honey, I Shrunk the Science Guy or something.
That's right. It's Honey, I Shrunk the Science Dude.
That was it.
Rudy the Science
'cause he's
Dude.
Rudy,
That's his whole
Rudy the Science
shtick.
Dude.
Yeah. So yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Science Dude. That episode's the first one where I really got that sense that they were like together, because there's the way that the episode works is that Wayne is shrunk with his brother, and they're off. They've been sort of kidnapped essentially by accident because this kid mistakes them for Happy Meal toys and takes them home. We'll talk about the product placement in a minute, I think, because there's also a real big episode centered around the Oreos, and I'm going to talk about that as well. Why all the product placement for shit that's going to make kids fat, America? Just saying. Product placement for toys like Micro Machines and Honey We Shrunk Ourselves. Cool, no problem. That's harming no one. Let's not. I mean, I wish I'd been advertised to less when I was a child for foods that I'm now very much dependent and addicted to. Please, let's not put that on another generation. Then again, I grew up with this show, so maybe that's why.
The point, yeah, blame this. The point Dad was going to make is that Amy, Nick, and Diane are basically running around manically trying to work out where they are. And it's like, no worries. And it's their entire plot. And I actually thought they were going to get to them a lot sooner, but they really dedicate the time to them working it out. There's a bit character who works at McDonald's, which is actually really funny.
One of my favourite characters in the whole show.
That whole episode is one of my favourite episodes. I think that's a great episode.
Yeah, like I said, his reappearance. If you do go back to this, Chris, and you want to fill in a few episodes, if you haven't seen his second episode, which is I think just called Honey, He's My Brother, that one, it's got a really low rating on IMDb, but I loved that episode.
Okay, intriguing.
Or is it called All Zelensky'd Up? I think it's Honey, He's My Brother. I'll double check that. I'll come back to you. But it's a great episode.
Nice. You were making so the family unit. So product placement.
I'll finish my family unit point because I've got myself off track with you. But so the family unit thing, like in that episode, it's not just that you're seeing Diane fight really hard to get Wayne back, but she's doing it alongside her children. And there's a point in the show where it becomes Team Zelensky, and it becomes I need my family's help. It isn't Wayne running off. I'm the scientist. I'm going to fix this. It's, well, I better get my family. They rely on each other a lot in this show, and they're always like, getting each other involved. Despite the fact that a lot of the plots start with one of them doing something they shouldn't do, and then keeping it secret from their family for comic effect for at least 20 minutes. Yes,
there's a point where they name it Team Zelensky, but there's not... The whole show is from the beginning is a true ensemble. Even from that first episode, Nick is helping the other three who are all together trapped. It never feels like Wayne's show, which is quite impressive and quite distinctive
from the
to the movies, where the movies it is quite separate. It's the kids and adult are literally most of the time separated. So
yeah. Interestingly. The worst rated episode of this show is called Driving Me Like Crazy. and it's an episode where Amy wants a car, and Wayne buys her one, and under the condition that he can install any safety equipment he wants. And she goes, well, absolutely, you're going to get me a car. I don't care if you install, extra airbags or whatever. And then, he ruins this car. It's pink, it's got lips, it's got hair. Like, it's insane, this car that they do. And it's got it's got like a robot android in the back that looks like a burly man with a mustache. And the idea is that it will scare off anyone from trying to, like, carjack her or something. But it also spits advice at Amy as she drives. Like, put on your seatbelt. And the episode ends up with them breaking the robot when Amy tries to remove it. It doesn't end, but the climax of the episode is she breaks that robot while trying to remove it, and it decides to strap her in the back seat and take control of the car itself. And then the GPS says it's going to take her to the bottom of a cliff, and the most direct route is over the edge of the cliff. So it becomes like Speed, where they're chasing down this car. And that's rated as the worst episode of the show. But you know what? I don't think it is, because I think that's silly but fun and harmless. And in the end, the family, there's a family story in there. And I think the strongest episodes of the show really look at the family and like do a lot.
So what is the weakest episode for you?
I was going to say, so the weakest episode by far is Honey, I'm Kung Fu Fighting. It doesn't make any sense. It never attempts to make sense. It's only sort of funny, and it's mostly annoying. It doesn't even try. It is the lowest effort of all of this. It basically opens up, the town's being attacked by ninjas. Wayne's the chosen one, so he's being trained to be a ninja to fight them off. Yeah. But they never fight them off with fighting. It's with breadsticks or dancing or wordplay, or it's one of the weirdest fucking 40 minutes of television I've ever seen, but not in a good way. It's just almost unwatchable. Like, it's the one I came the closest to turning off. I
didn't see it, but it sounds amazing.
It's you know what, it should be put in a time capsule as just like a future generation should see that this is how bad things got. And yet on IMDb, Driving Me Like Crazy is lower rated by like 2 whole points, and I'm just like, no, you're just wrong. And no, that's incorrect. That's just factually incorrect.
Especially if the episode is called Honey, I'm Kung Fu Fighting. Yeah, he's not.
Well, they do fighting, but it's hilarious because basically the way they do it is everyone does the moves really slow and then they speed them up. But because it's old cameras that couldn't film in a higher frame rate, it makes all the footage really choppy and weird. So when they're fighting, they're like just jittering all over the place visually. It's very bizarre. And the full episode title for the brother one, where his brother comes back, is Honey, He Ain't Rude, He's My Brother.
Oh, okay. Like in the song He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother.
Mm-hmm.
To play on that.
Mm-hmm. And it's and the other episode I mentioned that is a different episode called Honey, Situation Normal, All Zelensky'd Up, which is another episode I'd like to talk about, actually, but I feel like I'm overpowering this conversation.
No, that's what I expected, pre-warned, and want. Go on, because I haven't seen that one either.
Okay, so Honey, Situation Normal, All Zelensky'd Up is, in my opinion, the biggest missed opportunity of this show. The premise...
I've got my answer for that, but carry on.
The premise for this episode is incredible. So, he invents a machine, and the idea is that it will help somebody manifest their thoughts in real life. So, or it make them think that they can, at least. It'll induce a dream where you can manifest things, and therefore you'll feel like you can do it, or something like that, right? It's not very well explained at the start, to be fair. Then the setup for the real world what's happening storyline is Amy wants to get into a good college, and there's a college person coming to do an informal interview at her home, and she's worried that Wayne's gonna, show up as a cat or a cactus or something, like, you know what I mean, like, weird Zelensky nonsense, and it's gonna scare off because they're coming to their house, and they're worried that, like, the dog will enlarge again or something insane will happen, and they'll scare off this college, this person who's can control whether she gets to go to college or not. And she talks to Diane and says, "Look, can you talk to Dad. And she's like, yeah, it would be nice if for once we were a normal family. So she talks to Wayne, and Wayne is naturally really hurt because he's like, I love our family. Yes, we're weird. Yes, this is weird, but this is us. And Diane's thinking about, I just wish you were normal. And the machine puts her into a dreamlike state, and Wayne, where they're experiencing that, what it would be like in a world where things are normal, right? But we don't see much of that. In fact, the rest of the episode is dedicated to Amy getting her school friends to pretend to be her parents when the college person comes. And it's a bunch of sitcom-y jokes about, well, you're very young to be a father. Oh, well, my inventions, or that, you know what I mean? It's like lots of mishaps in the house with them pretending to be while Wayne and Diane are upstairs. And what Wayne and Diane are experiencing while they're upstairs, unconscious with the effects of this machine, is they're in a world where everything is normal. Anyone who acts unnormal will be normalized. And it's like a weird science fiction future where if you're not normal, you get dragged to this building where they zap your brain and make you normal like everyone else. Not very interesting, not very clever. What should have happened in this episode, in my opinion, and why I think it's the biggest missed opportunity, is alongside the Amy embarrassed by her family plot, Diane getting sucked into that machine and getting to experience what life would have genuinely been like if Wayne wasn't a wacky inventor and her kids weren't as quirky, and then regretting it deeply, maybe thinking it's real, and learning to love her own family, or learning that she does appreciate her own family and misses them.
Yeah, it would have been. That's a nice idea. It's a nice notion.
What a great premise for an episode that would have been. But that's not what happens. Amy larks about the house in a weird, sort of 70s sitcom style sort of caper. And they're just in a weird science fiction dystopia where they're being dragged to a machine to be normalized. It's very uninteresting, and it's a real shame.
Yeah. My choice for that isn't so much the episode could have done it, but I just think that as a concept it's genius, and I've said to you before about it. It's the haunted episode where basically Nick is being haunted for bizarre reasons involving him trying to fix his eyesight. But anyway,
I explained that at the beginning of this episode.
Oh yeah, well, you explained that plot earlier, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
But within that, he's getting haunted and terrorized by this ghost of a criminal.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
So he finds the PI, the investigator, who was always after that criminal but never caught him in life. And he goes to him and says, "Do you want a chance to catch him in death?" And that ghost helps them catch the other ghost. That is a fucking beautiful notion and idea. The idea of someone turning to the ghost of the guy who never caught him in life, he can catch him in death. Beautiful, and it is wasted in that episode.
Yeah, agreed.
It ends up being about they end up using the shrink ray for other purposes. So it turns out the shrink ray is the answer to get rid of the ghost, and I'm just like, oh, but that notion and that plot is beautiful, and that happens throughout this show. But it's part of the charm of it.
Yeah, I guess so. For me as well. In terms of missed opportunities, I do think there are too many episodes that lean into supernatural stuff. I think one or two, maybe one a season or something like that, would have probably been okay. Witches, ghosts, whatever. But they do so many of them. And I just think...
the witches one isn't that the season 2 finale? And it's really, we're doing witches for this?
And what I think I struggle with is, in a world where Wayne can invent anything and solve any problem, or to solve any problem and then go wrong, which is the setup for the show. You've got infinite possibilities for stories here. I don't see why we need to go to leprechauns and witches and ghosts.
Yeah, but see, I felt that way, and it could just be the coincidence of the episodes I watched, but I felt that way about the time machine. I know what you said earlier, and I agree with you. There is always a purpose behind it, but it is still leading to similar types of story.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think a time machine is still built into the science idea. You're shifting the genre of the show once every 4 episodes when you don't need to. There's plenty of mishaps and weirdness and craziness and wackiness that can come from science fiction I don't know why the show felt the need to rope in the supernatural too. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they were running out of ideas. There's a million and one things you can have Wayne invent to cause a million and one problems. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. So it's not so much that there's infinite possibilities; it's that there's infinite possibilities that veer less from the show's format, which is about an inventor and a scientific inventor. So leading into the supernatural goes against that. That's absolutely fair.
But it keeps forcing them into these weird scenarios where they have to give Wayne either a stance against it, as I think there's a scientific explanation, or ignore that, which makes you go, well, wait a minute, last week you were criticising the Leprechaun. Why are you just going with a ghost? Just see what I mean? Like, it's... And the reason I don't 100% mind Honey, I'm Haunted is because it starts as a science thing. He can see the ghost because of science. Do you understand? Did you see the difference? I think...
Yeah, definitely. Whereas the leprechauns, he literally steals some gold and the leprechaun appears.
Well, you're right, and that leprechaun isn't even a real leprechaun in the end. That's a fake out.
Yeah, but that's a whole weird thing in itself. But yeah.
Yeah, because then the real leprechauns show up and are like, what, you thought the guy with the pointy shoes and the green cloak was a leprechaun? And they're like, well, yeah. It's a good joke, actually. I thought that was funny when he's like, what, you thought the guy with the Irish accent?
It's so clumsy and unnecessary. Like, why do we need fake leprechauns? It's so bizarre.
But here's the thing, though. Again, why do you need an episode about a leprechaun? The possibilities of a scientist's sort of mishapped adventures and the ideas you can go different dimensions and different planets and different everything and time and space and just, you know, character stuff and there's an episode. I say great. There's an episode that's great because it's funny and his performance is insanely good. There's an episode where Wayne gets his sister-in-law's brain put in his own head by accident. I think it's called Honey, It Takes Two to Mambo, and he gets to act like this uptight sort of wealthy lady for half the episode because Diane's sister is inside him, her brain. Such a funny, stupid episode. But it's a character thing about he doesn't like her or doesn't get on with her, and he wants to try and get more on her wavelength, so he tries to sync their brains up, and that's how she ends up in his head. I would have never thought of that. It's not a traditional science fiction concept, you know. When you go to traditional science fiction, you think like time travel, you think like, you know, I mean, even the shrinking ray to some degree feels like a science fiction trope. You know, those sort of devices that do obvious things. The idea of trying to sync your brain up with someone because you don't understand them and feeling it'll make you understand them, but it going wrong and them ending up in your head. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, it's a really unique character-based idea. And
what I'm saying is, yeah, you had 22 episodes a year, so you were probably like scratching your head for ideas, but you could have kept them all at least in line with like the premise of your show. There was no need to dip into the well of supernatural stuff as well. There's enough original stuff to do with science fiction that was unnecessary, and then it forced this weird situation where like you were never sure where Wayne stood against it. Half this stuff, is he a skeptic? Is he on it? I don't understand. You know,
it's like when Harry Potter went into time travel, and you just kind of go, you don't, because now, why isn't time travel always a possibility and always an answer?
Yeah.
And an interesting problem I think the MCU is going to come up against.
Yeah, unless they go the way of, it don't exist, it's done, don't worry about it. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, did you have any other notes or triv for the TV show?
Sadly, no triv at all about this show. The closest I could think of find to triv when I did, and I tried, I promise you guys, I really, really tried to find trivia for this, was that they were both related to the actor George Buzzer, who plays Jake McKenna, the police chief that moves in the second season.
Yeah, the neighbour, yeah.
One of them was that he apparently was typecast a lot as a biker guy. So they thought it would be funny in his introduction episode to introduce him as like a rough biker guy, but then reveal he's actually this kind of goofy police chief character as like a twist. Because it was both poking fun at the typecasting for that actor and like a fun episode premise. And I thought that went really well, so thumbs up. But apparently, another thing that I found quite interesting was that George Buzzer was a cast member on a nearly identical show about a mad scientist and the family.
Really?
And it was 8 years earlier, I think, than this show.
Oh,
I'm just
wow.
pulling up the title because I'd forgotten it since I last spoke. He was Manic Mansion. And
Which is basically the same premise.
Almost identical. Let me read you the premise for Manic Mansion. A sitcom about amiable mad scientist who moves his family into a home inhabited by a sentient meteor. That part, not so much.
Wow.
But it is a family, and the premise of that one, get this right, because I looked at it and I was like, well, who did he play in that then? It also ran for 65 episodes, which is spooky because Honey, I Shrunk ran for 66. So these two shows are weirdly, despite the premise, George Buzzer also. But it turns out George Buzzer played a toddler that in the first episode, through the science, gets grown into an adult man. He's still a toddler, but he's in an adult man. And he stays that way for the rest of the show.
I mean, this show sounds like it deserves a podcast in itself, Dan. Get ready to watch 38 episodes of Manic Mansion.
I mean, crazy. But that is a weird coincidence that he ended up in both these two shows, and they are extremely similar.
As we've already mentioned, it's logically set between the first movie and the second movie. That's sort of triv. Isn't there? I swear I read somewhere there was an actor that was in both the movies and this. But
yeah, but I couldn't figure out who he was in this. But one of the I think the kid that comes around with the lawnmower in the first movie also at some point appeared in this show, but older and as someone else. I mean, that's something, I guess. But yeah.
So conclusions on this and the whole thing. Have you enjoyed rewatching this? You know what, I think this whole franchise and this TV show could be summed up with really interesting, unique ideas executed bizarrely.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look. I think this show is brilliant when it is pushing a family character story with a science fiction concept. And this is that, going back to that thing I said at the beginning, it's like flip a coin, 50-50, whether they do that or not. There are a lot of problems with the later seasons. The tone shifts drastically. The dialogue becomes more stilted, and it becomes way more willfully silly. Because it's silly in the first few seasons, but never at the expense of the story. Second season onwards, it feels like they'll throw the whole tension and premise of a story out the window for a cheap laugh if they can. You know, so these sincere and well-intentioned, sort of grounded in sort of logic, goofiness stories sort of become forced and deliberate and ungrounded and goofy, like, instead, you know, and the show stops trying to explain the insanity, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, so that leaves them to make the show 90% of the wacky insanity instead. So basically, like, that Kung Fu episode is just 90% insanity, because if you save time by not bothering to explain anything, then you can fit more insanity into the episodes. But like I said, goofiness within a consistent, grounded world is charming when that's all that's left. When you take out the explanations and the grounding of that, it's just overwhelming. And at a certain point, it does become numbing. You do really become desensitized to it.
That was my problem with it. When it was good, it's actually a really heartwarming, fun, like a real sense of fun show that is playing by its own rules and quite entertaining. And like I say, it's some of the quips, it's quite quick-witted scripts on occasions, but then it just makes choices that leave you bamboozled, and then just the whole watching it in the way we watched it becomes quite draining. Yeah.
And I will say as well, they had a bit of a narrative problem later on, because they started mixing in stories where it was the Zelinskys had to save the world from X. You know, swap out aliens, leprechauns, witches, spies, ninjas, whatever. I preferred it when Wayne's science is the catalyst for a character-based story, or is the solution to a character-based story. When it's just there, and then a villain appears.
Yeah.
In those episodes were by far the weakest as well, I felt.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think focusing on the family stuff that's brought out by Wayne's weird science stuff is a much better, because earned insanity is satisfying when it makes sense in the story logically, and it's impressive that they got that stuff and made it. It's always impressive when they get that stuff to make to work, But insanity without developed context just feels unearned, like unsatisfying, like random, like it's no good.
What are your thoughts on the franchise as a whole?
On Honey, I Shrunk as a franchise? I mean, inconsistent. Look, flip a coin for not just the TV show, but for the movies. Like, the first movie is fine. The first movie is good, I think, in the scheme of all of them. I don't think it's great, even now. But I think compared to when you put all the content next to each other, the movie's good. The second movie, not so good. The third movie's reasonable. The ride looked like a lot of fun, and the show, again, flip a coin, 50-50, like some bad, some good. Nothing is incredible. Nothing here is without flaw. It is all very easily criticized in some way or another,
and that does intrigue me about, and I'm not saying we're definitely going to do this. I'm way more on the Home Alone bandwagon, but that does intrigue me about Back to the Future, because almost, as we discussed on the first episode of this, Back to the Future is like my childhood nostalgia movie.
Mine too. Like, yeah.
I've not rewatched it recently, and obviously all the mum stuff, just like John Mulaney's got a great routine about it. Yes. There's a bunch of stuff about it, and I am wondering what I don't think If future generations watch Ghostbusters, and I still maintain Ghostbusters is a movie you need to watch at the right time in your life, but if older generations watch Ghostbusters at the right time, they'll have the same feelings we have towards it. Yeah. Trying to make an older generation watch Back to the Future at the right time, I'm intrigued whether they're going to think it holds up.
I honestly feel like Back to the Future will hold up a million times better than Honey, I Shrunk.
Oh god, yeah. But then that's what would be interesting. Like, that has got incredible moments, and yeah. So
it will be hard for us to be able to judge that, though, truthfully, because Back to the Future would be one of my top 3 films from my childhood.
Yes, if someone was to say to me, "What's your favourite film?" the two that immediately come to mind are Good Burger and Back to the Future.
Yeah, Back to the Future, Star Wars, and maybe Short Circuit for me. Or Gremlins is up there. Like, they're the original Aladdin, Disney Aladdin. Those are the tapes that I think I wore out. I just watched them so much, So, like, for me, it's like, it'd be harder for me to be objective about Back to the Future than this. Whereas this, I watched it a couple of times as a kid, enjoyed it, thought it was fun. Obviously, ended up watching the TV show. Saw both the other movies. So I've seen everything of this that we've reviewed. I'd already seen except for the ride, So I liked it enough, but it's not something I went back to in all the life. Whereas I know for a fact I definitely rewatched the Back to the Future trilogy 3 years ago.
Oh yeah. And I know those movies better. So yeah, who knows what's coming next? Obviously, we got Steven University. I've just realised we need to work out when we're recording that.
Well, I might ask if people can be patient. I know we said we'd come back straight after this, but we've got the statics to sort out.
Yeah, which is quite a big one. We've got the statics, and then the after party, and then an episode after that that's crammed full of shows. So yeah. So like I don't know. It's gonna be tricky to figure out what we do in terms of Steven University. So if people can bear with us on this channel, I'll try to make sure we have some content next week, but I don't know what that is. Bear with me. Yeah,
I think that's fair, right? Yeah. Me and Chris will work it out. Hopefully, it'll be the return of Steven University, but it would have to be something quick and easy that we can put together without a lot of work because we're really busy right now. So yeah, but this has been such a fun. This has been. I had a lot. I hope I didn't overpower. I feel really bad that I may have overpowered this one so much, but I just had. Oh man, all my time and thought and energy in the last few weeks has been dedicated to this show, and
which is why I let you overpower it, because otherwise that's not worth anything. And I want people to understand. Dan has watched a shitload of this, and he didn't need to, and it's very commendable and brilliant. So big love to Dan.
Just at the cost of my own, sanity and my own time, and also I think as well, because I was convinced you were basically going to watch it all, so I was like, I must catch up. I can't not be on top of it.
I feel bad.
I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to explain the reasoning for those who are going, Dan, you did not need to torture yourself that way. What are you doing? It wasn't all just the noble act of I wish to review it fairly. That was part of the thinking. I think it's best to review it fairly, but it wasn't the primary reason.
I'll vow now, if we do Back to the Future, I'll watch all the animated show.
Oh yeah, but how much of the animated show was there? Also, worth noting, and I want to make this clear, and I know we've said it before, but I want to say it really clearly. These are 42 fucking minutes an episode. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, nuts. Madness.
What? So I watched, I think, 32 or 33 episodes. So what is that What's that in hours? That's 23 hours of my life that I ain't getting back.
Well done, Dan. Here. Some claps for you, my friend. Well done. But what a glorious... I love that, as much as the tables had turned in episode 1, we're very much back to you doing all the hard work in episode 5.
So Back to the Future, the TV series, 26 episodes of 22 minutes each.
And I am willing to watch them all, Dan.
Yeah, 26 episodes. I mean, I don't think I would have too much trouble watching all of that. I mean, the 13 episodes a season, only 2 seasons.
But we're not making any promises for Back to the Future right away. I think...
I'm not sure we're going to do any of the stuff we're talking
about,
but it is interesting. People put their comments below, what are you thinking in terms of... Well, the problem with Ghostbusters is there were 2 series. There was the real Ghostbusters and Extreme Ghostbusters. And I remember liking Extreme Ghostbusters more.
I haven't seen either of them.
Mm.
But I don't ask what people want, Dan, because people want Steven University.
They made 65 episodes of the first Ghostbusters TV show, I think.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, no, wait a second. No, they didn't. 140. There you go, you can watch all of those.
140 episodes of the Ghostbusters TV series?
Yeah, but keep in mind... If you do that if they're 22 minutes an episode and you do them at Honey I Shrunk length, that's only 70 episodes, which is actually not that far off Honey I Shrunk.
Yeah, true. Anyway.
So I'm going to make you watch all of the real Ghostbusters.
Well, there's more than you did. You only did 36.
Alright, you can watch half of the real Ghostbusters, but half of the real Ghostbusters is... Still... Yeah, you need to watch 23 hours worth of it, basically.
Okay. Fine, if we ever do it.
Season 2 of The Real Ghostbusters was 65 episodes long.
Jesus Christ. Is it available anywhere as well?
What was that, sorry?
Is it even available anywhere?
I mean, yeah, it's syndication and I imagine DVD.
Oh, God. Anyway, these are just the ramblings of one person who's watched too much Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV series. And like I say, don't give the people the choice, Dan. They're going to choose Steven University. We may have to work
no, we're not doing anything like that anytime soon. I just mean in the future. Obviously, the goal is to get back to Steven University. If we don't have time at the moment because of NBS is it we're about to do and for those who don't know, actually we should mention it here. We're doing a live episode of Nothing But Static on the 7th of June.
A week today.
Well, I say we're doing a live episode. We're doing an episode and we're going to be broadcasting us recording it live. So if you can watch along with us recording. It'll be 6 p.m. UK time. Oh, don't make me remember the other times.
Friday the 7th of June. So literally a week today. Well, when this goes up, if you're listening on the day of release.
Yeah, there you go. So a week today. There's not like there won't be any content on the channel next week. But yeah, I don't know when we're going to be able to get a Steven University or anything else put together in time. But we'll see what we can do. We don't want to let you guys down, so we'll do what we can. But yeah, the goal is once once things have calmed down on the Nothing But Static front, would be to get back to regular episodes of Steven University. No news out of MomoCon at all. No news out of upfronts of Steven Universe. So, I mean, we're looking at San Diego Comic-Con for any information now. So we'll have to wait and see how we can string that podcast out between now and September.
Yep.
That's going to be a
Lots
thing.
of rewatches.
Lots of rewatches, guys. Going back to all I guess that people will be happy with that too, though, because they really want us to rewatch Rosie's Scabbard. So, but yeah, no, thank you for coming on this journey with us. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you for the 3 people still listening. Appreciate that. I've had a blast. I've had a great time doing this, and I know that the people, although the numbers have been low, I know that the people that have been listening have been really enjoying. So we are eternally grateful, as always, for your support and your continued listens.
Especially because we put up, hours and hours of this stuff across a week, like idiots. This should have been 5 hours. This should have been 5 weeks worth of content by our normal rate.
Just chucked it all out in a week.
Because we're fucking idiots.
Wouldn't be struggling with Steven University then, would we?
No, that's also true. God damn it.
We'll work out. Anyway.
Anyway, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Week today here, 6 p.m. UK time. Nothing But Static Live. The Statics. We're giving out awards based on the last year of television. Come along. Be a blast.
Will be. Do it.
I'm very excited.
Do it. Join us.
I feel like you've watched way too much Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You need to go watch some proper TV, Dan.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, okay.
Are you gonna? You actually? Let me ask you the question you asked me earlier. Are you going back? Are you watching more of this? Are you filling in the gaps?
Realistically, no. But there are certain episodes. I might look at your list and pick out the ones you've spoken about today that I haven't seen yet. So, like the Name the Tune one.
Yeah, that's good.
Really intrigues me.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. It's silly as hell.
And obviously the one where Diane's in the red dress.
Yeah. Do you want to figure out which one that is for you, mate?
No, I'm legitimately joking.
It's episode 3 of season 2, I think. I've just looked at it. And it's called It's Doomsday. Honey, It's Doomsday, and it's just a distractor because Wayne's trying to stop a meteor from hitting the Earth, and she's distracting the government agent from blowing it out of the sky because Wayne is convinced that'll irradiate the Earth and be bad.
This show is crazy.
It's a fucking weird show. And that episode ends with them going like, looking up through the telescope at the sky, being like, "Oh, the sky's so pretty." And then there's a really distant shot of a spaceship with Arnox waving, the alien they met on 3 of the other episodes. And she just goes, "Better set another plate for tea." And I was like, "Oh my god, is he going to be in the next episode? That's so cool!" And I opened up the next episode. Nope, he's not in it. It was just a little gag at the end of that one. Couldn't get the actor back, I guess.
Completely bizarre for anyone that's not seen the other ones that he's in, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, you'd be baffled why that episode ended with an alien waving at them. Very strange. Anyway.
Stunning. Right.
Cool. Thanks very much for listening.
See you in a week for the live one.
For the live Statics. But yeah, but thank you for sticking with us on Honey, I Shrunk Nothing But Static. We hope to, comments below on other old movies, family movies preferably, because I think those are the funnest ones, because they're also the ones we'll have actual nostalgia for, that you'd like us to maybe take a look back at. I think that's a weird little niche. I don't think people aren't making videos on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV series, so I feel like I want to keep doing weird stuff like this. That's fine. That's fun. So yeah, suggestions down below. Kids movies you fondly remember that you'd like us to watch. Please no one suggest Fern Gully. I can't do it. Can't do it. Not doing it.
I don't know what that is. So.
Robin Williams playing, I believe, a rapping bat.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
No, it's not good. He apparently only did that movie because he wanted to work on he really liked it's got a very heavy, environmentally friendly message, Fern Gully. And he thought that was a really important message. That's why he got behind it. And it actually caused a lot of problems for him with his deal with Disney. Because it was being made alongside the first Aladdin. There's a whole thing. But no, I'm not. Nope.
Oh, well.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Right.
Rapping bat. Nope.
Okay. You going to take us home, Dan? It's gone on too long, my friend.
Yeah, it has. Thanks very much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
We'll see you again for whenever we do something as weird as this. I need sleep.